May our eyes be open to this and all the moments of generosity throughout. May we be truly grateful for the many blessings of life and trust in the continual bounty of the universe. In gratitude and joy, may this offering be blessed, that it may in turn be used to bless the world in the spirit of love. Amen. And in keeping with that spirit of gratitude, I also would like to share these two items that have, from our moment of gratitude. I am grateful that UUFS ordained John on March the 24th, 2013. And I am so excited about the music here at UUFS. So, when I was a child, my father would occasionally take me fishing. It never ended well. We would get up at the crack of dawn, usually on some chilly morning, and drive some unknown, interminable distance to find that perfect fishing spot that my father had heard about. We tramped through the woods in the semi-darkness, and then we would take our 5-gallon buckets and turn them upside down on some muddy riverbank. And then we would bait our hooks, and we would cast out our lines, and we would wait. And wait. And wait. It was so boring. I would do things like I would take sticks or rocks and toss them into the water, which of course tended to chase the fish away, which on its face was self-defeating. And then of course my dad would make me stop doing that. And so I would wander off, tromping through the woods, exploring, making all sorts of noise. And eventually, no doubt earlier than my father intended, and certainly longer than he could stand, he would decide to give up and go home. My dad, you see, was an avid fisherman. He would spend endless hours debating tackle and looking at various forms of lines and his fishing poles and all sorts of things. I'm having a little technical difficulty here, folks, so bear with me here. Okay. Avid anglers are a breed apart. Or they are maybe like all avid sportsmen. They go out in all sorts of weather. They spend countless hours thinking about the advantages and the disadvantages of lures and lines and tackle and various kinds of fishing rods, all in the service of the perfect combination of location and weather and equipment, and all of the other factors that are necessary to achieve victory. Unfortunately, this was not something my father and I ever managed to share. Now, to be clear, I loved being out in the woods, hiking and camping and all of those sorts of things. It was the sitting around that drove me crazy. The waiting, the boredom, that was what I objected to. clearly that is not a part of my personality that has changed much, because I hate being bored. Anyway, so there's also a different kind of fishy experience that I had as a child, which I did in fact enjoy. We also had an aquarium. It was a pretty good-sized tank, actually, and I loved spending time watching these bright-colored, flashing fish, the shimmering scales, all those fish going about their little fishy lives, looking for tidbits among the gravel at the bottom, and chasing one another around. I found it endlessly fascinating. But keeping an aquarium thriving and healthy is also an investment. It's an investment of time and energy. The goal here is keeping the status quo. That is, you have to maintain the aquarium to achieve optimum levels of health for your fish. You have to check the water quality and make sure that the filter is maintained and get the proper fish food for the fish that you've got. And by the time you've purchased the aquarium and the filter and the fish and the proper fish food and the gravel and the cleaning apparatus and the heater and all of the other things necessary, you have invested quite a bit. So it demands constant vigilance. You either maintain that system or the fish are going to die. And you've wasted all that time, energy, and money. But it is worth it because you have this lovely aquarium of which you can be justly proud. It will give you endless hours of pleasure, listening to the restful burbling of the water, watching the occupants darting around. There is something fascinating, I think, about fish. The endless color and variety that they can breathe underwater, their iridescent scales, and their grace with which they can glide through the water. They are, in fact, as different from human beings as one can imagine. And many of them are also delicious. Seafood has always been an important source of food throughout history. Being a fisherman, being able to provide food for yourself and others, has always been seen as an important and useful trade. Fishing and fish are prominent in many of the religious traditions of the world. In Buddhism, it symbolizes happiness. The fish symbolizes freedom, indicating freedom of movement in the water, and it also represents fertility and abundance. In Hinduism, Matsya was the avatar of the Hindu god Vishnu. He was in the form of a fish, and he is often listed as the first avatar of the 10 primary avatars of Vishnu. The myth is that Matsya rescued the first man, Manu, from a great deluge which covered the earth. Fish and fishing, of course, also pop up as themes in Christianity. In the Gospel of Matthew, it is, in fact, the beginning of episode in the public ministry of Jesus. In the Gospel, Jesus is walking along the shore of the Sea of Galilee, and he sees two fishermen, Simon Peter and Andrew, and he says, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." Then James and John join in with him, and now he has 4 followers, and he's on his way to his public career. Now, I just want to pause for a moment and think about that. Now, I'm pretty sure that Jesus was not suggesting that those fishermen cast nets over people and haul them in a very literal way. I'm sure Jesus was speaking metaphorically, or at least I certainly hope so. Fishermen in Galilee, of course, used nets, and so I believe that he was saying rather that he and his merry band of disciples would gather people in somewhat more gently, sharing the good news. Now, but here's the thing. There is no indication, and I'd like you to sort of think about this in a little different way. There's no indication that the fishermen knew what that good news was. There was just this random guy who walked up to them and said, "Follow me, and I will make you fishers of people." Now, so put yourself in these guys' place. You are going about your business, and somebody walks up to you and says, "Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of people." What would your response to that be? One wonders. I'm thinking things like, "Are you nuts? What are my wife and kids going to do? Who's going to explain that Daddy's gone off for some unknown reason with some wild-eyed visionary?" And yet, they do follow him. Now, we don't know how they handle all of that. Presumably, maybe they were given time to go settle things out with their family, or maybe Jesus was invited home to meet the wife and kids. Maybe they got packed off to the in-laws. I don't know. In fact, that part is never explained. But here is what is interesting, is that, in fact, in the Gospel of Matthew, that whole thing sets up the entire rest of Jesus' life. And it follows throughout Christian thought. So here's my question to you. Which would you rather be? A fisher or a keeper of the aquarium? Now, if you'd rather be an angler, you're out there gathering fish. You're wading through turbulent waters, braving the elements, getting down and dirty, all for what the reward might be. Tasty food to share with others. You might bring in the big catch, but you just don't know. You might come up empty. You set out for some unknown catch, and whatever it might be is almost certainly going to be a surprise. It might be a tiny clownfish, or an eel, or a tuna, or an old tire. You just don't know. You go out there and you take your chances. Or maybe you'd rather be a keeper of the aquarium. You're making a beautiful world serene for others free to explore within carefully controlled boundaries. It involves constant vigilance, paying attention, maintaining proper temperature and cleanliness, and it needs to be carefully monitored. You can't have too many, because there's only room for so many fish in the aquarium. But you are needed. You are their sole support. Without you, the aquarium is going to die. There is certainty and comfort here. Now, metaphors are pretty wonderful things, aren't they? They can be used in all sorts of ways to illustrate all sorts of ideas. And on the one hand, life is like a fishing expedition. We often don't know exactly where our decisions will lead. We try to prepare as much as possible. We pack what we think we'll need, and we gather what we know, and we forge ahead. But the reality is, we can't predict the future. We have no idea. It might be the right decision, we might just have to have patience and see. Or we might come to the conclusion that our decision, whatever it was, is not a viable one. And we have to change the course of our lives. In life, as in fishing, you might land a big fish, or you might come up with a boot. We have simply no way of knowing in advance. I have to tell you, sometimes my life feels like that. It's a little messy. I'm sure all of you have well-ordered lives and you're not in that particular boat, but mine's a little bit messy. Usually it works out okay. There have been times when I have failed, sometimes failed spectacularly. And then, sometimes, I am rewarded with an experience which can only be described as transcendent. It makes my heart full and makes me so grateful for my life. But you never know. That's what keeps life interesting, isn't it? And on the other hand, sometimes after you've been out in the elements, you want to go home and rest and get warm and take care of business. That's why the aquarium metaphor, I think, is also useful. Once again, it is a metaphor for life, for stillness and waiting. But this is a kind of detached waiting, don't you think? Sometimes you do just want to be an observer. You want to sit back and watch and let others do the mucking about. And there's also an element of vigilance here, and responsibility, and maybe a little bit of control. You know who you are. We want to keep things at a safe distance to sane and the same. Now, I'm not saying here that one approach is bad or inadequate. We are human beings, and we are far too inconsistent for that. We live our lives, actually, with both metaphors. Sometimes it takes a leap of faith. Some guy walks up to you and says, "Follow me," and you do. You set out on an unknown journey, not quite knowing what you will find. But other times we go into maintenance mode. We're trying to keep things organized and controlled. Now, neither approach is completely without merit, and neither also does it lead to one way or another, lead to a completely healthy life. It's not an either-or choice, my friends. It is rather, I think, more of a sometimes this and sometimes that kind of adventure. The truth is that life is simply too complex to approach in just one way. Now, our congregation also is a complex organism, is it not? As a corporate entity, we must be both keepers of the aquarium and fishers. Just as the aquarium must be maintained or it will die, so this place, this congregation must be maintained. It is our responsibility, every single person in this room, to make this place the kind of place that we will all love, that we can all share who we are as complete and total human beings. Our fifth principle speaks of the democratic process within our congregations, and our congregational polity says that we ourselves must be keepers of this particular aquarium. By the way, in case you had any doubts, I am not the boss of you. For most people, they know that already. We feed one another. We explore together what it means to be a community. And sometimes, too, there is fishing here. Just as fishermen spend time focusing on their bait and tackle and all the accoutrements needed, we explore our principles. We prepare ourselves to go out into the world. We make new friends here. We try new things. We have conversations which might be uncomfortable sometimes, without quite knowing what the outcome might be. This is our home port, our safe haven. From here, we can launch ourselves out into the world, finding new friends and allies, bringing new ideas into these walls. We brave the elements of frustration and despair and anger and indifference for that big reward, that big fish. Love, connection, joy, beauty, transcendence. As Dan Bogman points out in our reading this morning, when we fish, we are awake. We're attuned to the environment, to the world, to the reverence and wonder of life. It seems to me that holds true for both fishing and for being a keeper of an aquarium. Differently, perhaps, but equally true. And as he says, if that isn't spirituality, I don't know what is. Amen. Blessed be, and may it ever be so.